Chapter 13. Start Spreading the News. 3rd of March 2019, 9:15 a.m. It's Tuckers again, Mr. Diary. If I carry on at this rate, I'll be needing to use the next hull along on my belt. Looking at the subway or bus route to Brooklyn, it would take me over an hour to get there from where I'm based. So I think I'll treat myself to another cab ride. I can certainly afford it, and I'll be there in half the time. Having read up on the area, the population seems to be made up mainly of Jews or Chinese and Hispanic communities. It is described as vibrant and safe, according to TripAdvisor. Mr. Moreno suggested I seek out the congregation Beth Elohim on 274 Garfield Place, Brooklyn. This is where his friend, the Rabbi Green, would be working. I'm not sure how he can help me, but it must be a start. Kaplan is a popular Jewish surname, and after 70 years, the likelihood of them still being in the area, alive and well, isn't great. Certainly their parents will have died a long time ago. And what of their surname? If they have married, there is a strong chance that they'll be going by a different name. And Frankenberg, whilst not as common as Kaplan, it is still a popular surname in the Jewish community. After World War II, the number of Jews in New York City rocketed to over 2 million, and whilst that number has dropped considerably since, mainly due to migration, they still equate to about 10% of the population of the city. My plan of action is a little vague at the moment. I have little to go on and little to tell the Rabbi Green. I just hope he has some ideas of his own of how to help me. I will update you again when I get there, Mr. Diary. 11:35 a.m. Another eventful cab ride and another eventful meeting. I think the cab driver had his eyes shut for most of the journey. How we didn't end up in the East River, I'll never know. Anyway, there I was in the Borough Park neighbourhood. The atmosphere was very different from downtown Manhattan. It was quiet and calm and peaceful. The Hasidic Jews were everywhere, so noticeable in their traditional dress, and this was very much their community. I followed the sat-nav on my phone across the delightfully scenic and welcoming Prospect Park. The sun was out again, and it was another beautiful day. Walking through the park, you could be forgiven for thinking you were not in the middle of a sprawling metropolis at all. The sound of birdsong and the rustling of leaves in the wind drowned out the distant sirens and traffic din. Even after I'd made my way to the other side of the park, the streets were relatively quiet. I soon found myself standing at the entrance of the congregation Beth Elohim building. A clean and polished granite stone building with the Star of David displayed proudly at the top of the dome on the roof. A building like this seemed too ornate and too old-fashioned to have a bell, but it did, and I pressed it. After a few moments I heard the clatter of keys and the door opened. I was greeted by a young man, no more than 17 years I'd guess, sporting a short beard and side curls, or paillettes as I later found out. He offered me a warm smile and invited me inside, after I explained who I was and who I was looking for. Inside, the building was even grander. The echo of our footsteps on the marble floor was the only sound I could hear as I was guided through this holy and sacred place into a smaller room at the back, where I was offered a seat and asked to wait. I was soon joined by the Rabbi Green. Not knowing what the correct form of greeting was, I offered my hand, and he shook it enthusiastically. I asked him if I could use my dictaphone, and he didn't seem to mind when I placed it on the table beside us. He just smiled and nodded at me, which I took as the go-ahead. "Sit, sit. I spoke to my good friend Barry last night, and he said you would like to come along and visit our humble place of worship today. I'm so glad to meet you. I hope I'm in a position to help," he said. He was a very smiley, jolly sort of chap, and that put me at ease straight away. "Barry rarely beats me when we play squash together," he said, "so I'm happy to help him out in other ways if I can." I explained why I was there and told the story of Ernie and the Kaplans yet again. I quite enjoyed telling it, actually. I enjoyed seeing people's reactions. I even felt a part of Ernie's life now. Rabbi Green clapped his hands together at the end and shouted out, "Well, well, well! Bravo!" He continued, "You have set yourself quite a challenge, Mr. Brunskill. Quite a challenge indeed. But don't be daunted by names and numbers. Our community is large, but also it's a close-knit community. After all that has happened to us historically, I suppose we feel safer together. I'm sure you understand. This can be a little suffocating at times, but I wouldn't change it for the world. Yes, Frankenberg and Kaplan are common names, and it must seem like you're trying to find a needle in a haystack. But let's just say, if you have a strong magnet, the job is not nearly as difficult. We are interlinked with the other synagogues around the city, you know, schools and colleges too. Kaplan, if I'm not mistaken, is an Ashkenazi name. That gives us a starting point, because many Ashkenazis came to New York from Eastern Europe, Russia, and Germany. People tend to stay with their own kind, don't they? We have had over 70 synagogues in the city now, but I'm guessing if they gravitated to any area, they would have settled where the other German speaking Jews would go. Now that narrows it down to certain areas of the city. I'm not saying that's where they would have settled, but if I was a betting man, I would wager there's a strong chance they did. I'd like to help you with this. It gives me a bit of a buzz, all this investigating business. It must be all the cop shows on TV. I'll tell you what, leave me your number and your hotel details, and I'll see what I can find out for you this afternoon. I'll make a few calls and inquiries of my own. I believe you're going to the Jewish Heritage Museum too. That will be an interesting experience for you, I'm sure. When you're there, study the maps and listen to the real life audio stories from those who emigrated from Europe. You'll get a feel for what life was like for the new settlers. Anyway, leave it with me today, and I shall call you with anything I find this evening. I plan to be in Manhattan tomorrow. It's my day off, and I intend to spend it shopping and chilling out. Even a rabbi needs to relax. He laughed. If you're not too busy, it would be nice to meet up for a coffee somewhere. I don't know, a lovely little Colombian place near Penn Station. Fancy it? He was such a jovial and positive man. I was enjoying his company, and I enthusiastically accepted his offer. We shook hands again, and he showed me the back to the front door. He said, "We are very much part of the New York City now, Paul. But for many years Jews were considered as pariahs, even in this land of the free. We've had to work hard to be accepted and appreciated. We're a decent people, friendly and open. This isn't the image the media like to portray. Our door is always open to you, and I will do all I can to help you. Enjoy the city, learn about the people and the history. Chat later, and may God be with you." When he closed the door behind me, I was already looking forward to his call.